Well, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Green Dragon. Today we have Joe coming back on, and a good friend of his, Adam. Um, Adam goes to law school with Joe, and sounds like they have a pretty good time learning about how to become lawyers and everything that's involved with that. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for
Happy to
having
be
us.
here.
Um, so maybe you guys could chat about a little bit of your work dynamic and then how you guys are essentially building your skill sets to become exemplary lawyers in the real world. I've heard a little bit from Joe, like as much as he could fit in a couple hours on the podcast of like what it's like, but I'd love to hear more about it.
Take it away, Adam.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Adam Myers. Like you said, I go to law school at Ohio Northern with Joe. Um, yeah, our work dynamic, we are kind of study partners, and also pretty good friends, I would say, I hope. Um, I do a little bit more of like appellate work when it comes to moot court stuff, and Joe's a trial guy. But yeah, we study together. We get ready for finals together. We're in a lot of the same classes, so we're always bouncing ideas off of each other. And right before finals, during crunch time, we always meet up and um, try to make sure we're all on the same page. And then occasionally, when it comes to some of the extracurricular stuff like moot court and trial team, we'll kind of also bounce ideas off of each other there. And it's just kind of nice to have a completely different perspective because, like I said, Joe's more of a hot shot trial guy, and I'm more of a bore you to death appellate work guy. So, yeah.
So
Yeah, I
I'm,
wanted to.
oh, go
Good.
ahead, Joe.
I was going to also add, just for context for you, Tom, with law, the first year and a half or so of law school, your schedule is pretty much built for you. There are certain classes you have to take. It's not unlike us at Wyoming Catholic, where we all took the same classes. And then the last year and a half, we've pretty much you get a little bit more free reign as far as what you can take. There's a lot of different options. But Adam and I have always been very intentional about trying to take most of the same classes, or at least the ones we know where there's going to be big exams, and then we try to take those together. That way, we always have each other to lean on. And then if it's more of a skills based class, or like I guess the equivalent of a an elective, then we aren't so worried about those. Those fill up pretty quickly. But for the big four classes, we've always worked together.
Yeah. And generally, we try to pick classes that we know are likely to be tested on the bar or that we both have an interest in pursuing outside of law school. For instance, we've taken a couple tax classes that won't be tested on the bar, but they'd be nice to know for business law. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like that's a huge leg up because it seems like that's usually like when people call lawyers for taxes.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like even
Yeah.
especially
if
when it,
that's not your specialty, you could always have a new clientele there. Yeah.
yeah, especially when it comes to small businesses, any sort of businesses. Obviously, the accountant's your first go-to, but certain things, yeah, it's helpful to consult a lawyer for.
Yeah.
Think especially like you don't declare a major in law school. You just get to take classes that either interest you, or some people do the easy thing and they just take a professor they know is going to be an easy A or an easy workload.
Right.
Um, my last semester coming up, I picked a lot of classes that I know won't have final exams because I don't want that pressure on my last semester before graduating. So I'm going in knowing I'm going to have a lot of projects and things that'll be due around finals time, but no, only one class that I know I'm going to have to really sit down and grind and study for. And this past semester, I think both of us only had two finals. So it was really nice being able to just spend a whole week just focusing on one topic. I mean, you remember, Tom, when we had 1 week for finals and it was a different exam every day, back to back to back to back. And it was like, all right, finish one exam, eat lunch, and get right on to the next one. So
Yeah. Especially for Baxter. Remember that? I think I clocked 26 hours studying for that exam. It was
I don't remember
insane.
what I clocked. That was before I was a good student because that was sophomore year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was before I suddenly started caring about school.
Yeah. I think I was so scared because he talked about like I was gonna crush us all and I really didn't want to fail out. And I was like, okay, I'll just keep reading. But that's smart though.
For context, Adam, Dr. Baxter taught Dante, and like the entire semester was the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. And so like his exam we knew was going to be like a just nitpicky uh memorization romp through all of it. And like we had to be able to like write in order all the circles of hell, all the tiers of purgatory, all the levels of paradise, and have them all memorized. And like remember, and it wasn't that we had to like know one important character from each of those circles as well.
Yeah, and you had to kind of be familiar with like five or six. So you knew
I
kind of the
wanted to
story.
cry.
Yeah. It was crazy. Oh.
It sounds like a
But that
doozy.
I mean that's smart though that you guys like focus in with classes that aren't gonna add unnecessary stress to your workload. Um,
And then on top of that, we both do a lot of extracurricular stuff. So
Yep.
um, both of us are on the Law Review, which is a journal. Adam's actually our editor in chief, our fearless leader. Um, and then I'm on the board with him as our sites editor. And then we both do competition stuff. I'm on mock trial and Adam's on moot court, as you said, doing appellate work.
so what does it look like being an editor in chief? I've always been curious about that, like, 'cause it's usually like a big job and I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, it's a big job. Um, but it's not that bad the way that we do it. We really space out the work and our managing editor does a really good job of scheduling. But basically we I'm involved in the giving offers to authors. That's a little mouthful. Basically we get a bunch of article submissions and myself and the articles editor reviews all of those submissions and determines, okay, is this something that we potentially want in our journal? And then we send about three-ish articles to the article selection committee, who votes on their top articles. Then we give an offer out to the author. Hopefully they accept. Unfortunately, we get a lot of rejections. So that's always sad when you get an article that you really like and then they go with a larger law review, but it is what it is. Um, so that's my part of the selection process. And then the editing process, essentially, it'll go through our 2Ls, which we call them staff editors. The second year law students, they are the first to touch it. We kind of divvy up the articles. We'll have about three-ish, sometimes four, depending on length, articles that we split up amongst about 10 to 12 people. They go through all the above the line edits, which is the grammar, the wording, and then the below the line edits as well, which is cites. And then they also have to go through each citation and they fact check it. So they'll go to the original source material that the author is citing to, and they have to review all that. And then what they do is they make a copy of the PDF of whatever the source material is. They'll highlight the information that the author is citing and put it in our drive just so that as the process goes along, everybody can see, okay, this is what this person did in this part of the process. And you can also check to make sure they're doing their jobs correctly. So after that, it goes through our editorial board, which is comprised of three Ls, third year students, and Joe is our citations editor. We have a manuscript editor who just does the grammar and the above the line. And then we have research articles editors that goes and checks all the source material again, just to make sure that the staff editors found the right material. And then finally, once it goes through everybody, comes to me and I go through everybody's edits and check them. I'll go through all of we call them binders of the source material PDFs. I'll go through all those and make sure that it is the correct stuff. So I'm basically just double checking everybody else's work. And I'll go through like if there's any issues where like, hey, I couldn't find this source, I'll go try to find it myself or talk to our librarians, see if I can find it, or I'll talk to the authors. That's something else I should have mentioned. Once we select an article, I'm the person that's responsible for communicating with the authors, and then I'm also the person responsible for communicating with the publishers. So once we go through all of the editing process of the articles, I compile it all back together, send it to the author for them to either accept or reject whatever our suggested edits are. And then once they send that back to me, I use a slightly outdated software program that is very frustrating to put it in its final format and then send it back to the author one more time for them to approve it. There's the beautiful copy that Joe has, and then send it to the editor or the publisher. So that's my job in terms of the actual work. I'm also the head of the organization. So if there's any God forbid, personnel issues. If any of our editors aren't getting along, if somebody's not picking up their slack, it boils down to me and also kind of our managing editor to make sure those issues are smoothed over. But luckily this year we have not really had hardly any issues at all. So we've got a really good group of people.
It really is a team effort. The better everyone else along the chain of command does their job, the less work we make for Adam. And I always tell Adam, like when this last round of edits came through, I was in the throes of getting ready for competition when my deadline for getting all the citations edited done wasn't. I told Adam, I said, if this gets to you and I have missed this or this look came across as rushed or sloppy, please send it back to me and I'll do it. We didn't have that issue, but he did in fact text me a couple times being like, what's going on here? Because I did miss some things.
Mm.
Um, but we do a lot of work together, just even if we're in the law review office together. When he mentioned the software being frustrating, I'm chuckling because I'm usually there for those crash outs, especially when the computer randomly turns off and you'll lose half of your work.
Yeah, I think
But
I was working for about 2.5 hours on something, and the computer just decided to turn off for no reason, and I lost everything. So, but it was
Uh,
much quicker getting back to the point that where I was because I was kind of learning the software for the first time. I'd been shown how to use it, but it was about 4 months previously. Um, but yeah, it'll be fine the next time I go to format it, but the first time I formatted it, it was a learning curve for sure.
Dang. Yeah, don't you love software?
Yeah.
I mean, kind of as like with like programming websites. It's always like, you can do this, and like this will work for you. And you start using it, and you're like, these buttons don't exist. These things don't exist. And then you're like, okay, let me see if ChatGPT knows what's going on, because it usually has like a back end access. And you go into there and you say, what am I missing here? And they'll tell you. And you're like, that isn't on my screen. And they're like, oh, yeah, sorry, I messed that up. And you're like, you're a computer. You're supposed to know these things. Uh,
that GPT hallucinating.
Yeah.
yeah, man. So are those articles, how many pages of those, well, how many pages is an article roughly?
So it kind of depends. We do some student publishing and some outside academic publishing. So our students will write case notes, which is just taking a single case and analyzing it. And those are roughly about 10 to 15 pages. And we do about three of those per journal, except for our summer edition. That's a whole nother story. Um, and then we'll do outside academics, which we call them lead articles. And those are just professors and lawyers all around the world that submit them. And those can range anywhere from 15 pages to 100. Generally
Wow.
for one issue, we look to be about 120 to 150 pages total in it. So we sometimes we'll get a really good article though that it stretches out to the 90-ish page limit. or the 70-page limit, and it's just too good to pass up. And
Mhm.
so when we're trying to keep in that limit, we'll consider the length of articles and the quality of the articles as well.
Man, so you're kind of like publishing a book every time then.
Yep.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Every school year is a new volume number, and then we'll do um or is it yeah, every school year is
Yeah.
a new volume number, and then we'll do issue numbers. We do 3 issues throughout the year. Our fall edition is 3 case notes, 3 of those student case notes, and then however many lead articles. I think we had 4 this time around, which is normally about the max that we do. And then the spring we'll do another 3 case notes and also student comments, which are the last year's editorial board that graduated last year wrote those, and then we select them. We'll select 3 of those, and then we'll also probably do 1 to 2 lead articles as well.
I just wrote my comment this last semester. And so when we graduate, the editorial board that gets elected in, once we're gone, they'll be the ones to select of the of th 3Ls who wrote a comment, which ones are going to get published. So fingers crossed, but I can't get greedy. I'm already in 2 editions.
Yeah.
So
And then our third edition is our symposium edition, and that comes out generally in the fall, and we next year's editorial board will work on that in the summer. That was our first project as an editorial board. And every year we do a symposium where we invite lawyers and professors and academics from all around the world that have to do with whatever topic we select that year. So last year we did an entire symposium on environmental law. So the entire law school kind of shuts down for the day somewhat. We rent out the giant lecture hall, and they give lectures on whatever they're very knowledgeable about. And then those lecturers will write a article for us to put in our symposium edition.
Hmm. Man.
we usually try to get a good keynote speaker in for those. Last year we had Robert Billet, who was the attorney that kind of led the charge on taking down DuPont Chemical in like one of these major class action suits for chemicals leaching into the water. Um, there's a movie about it, I think Dark Waters, I think is what it's
Yep.
called. But he came and spoke last year. So we usually try to get like one big speaker and then a handful of other very knowledgeable people from different areas of the field that we're discussing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a decent movie. It's got Mark Ruffalo in it as Robert Bilott.
Hmm. I have to check that out. Huh. Yeah, it sounds like, well, that sounds really cool that I guess you can see someone at that level, articulate their thoughts to your student body. Um, I
We have
just
some
was,
good legal minds at our school. I just found out
yeah.
we just we have an online JD program, which is in its sort of inaugural class, is now in their second year technically. And I just found out we have Bobby Sternheim teaching evidence for them. And Bobby Sternheim defended Ghislaine Maxwell, and she was on the defense team for Diddy. And so like we've got her coming in coming in strong. So
Yeah, and I
um
believe she's an alum from ONU, I
yeah,
believe.
Dang.
is she? If
I
she's I
think
know she's Stetson. I know she's connected to Stetson somehow.
maybe that's it. I think another person that was involved in the Diddy trials was an ONU grad, but I could be wrong.
Huh.
I know someone who was with Luigi Mangione at the beginning though. So
Him too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
was that one you?
Well, how did ONU become so excellent at teaching law? I mean, that's quite a few big names.
It's a
We've been
great
around a
question.
long time. We've got a great dean who has a lot of connections. I mean, Professor Sternheim, I believe, is a friend of our dean, and so she came and spoke as part of a lecture series, our 1L year. Um, so she already kind of had a foot in the door now with this remote teaching opportunity.
Mm.
Um, And then like Robert Billet, that was through the student who was coordinating the symposium at the time. So on our editorial board, we have someone whose job is explicitly to handle organizing the symposium, reaching out to the speakers, handling the budget for all the events, and just kind of steering the ship forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just how long ONU has been around, we've got a pretty solid reputation, but I would describe us as a small school with a very big impact.
Mm.
I think we're what number one in Ohio.
For law schools,
I want to say yes, it or I don't think that's just trial advocacy.
I know we're ranked highly. I don't know if we're number one.
We were voted one of the best law schools in the Midwest. I do know that.
I think our undergrad was voted one of the best universities in the Midwest as well.
Okay.
I don't know if that was law school or not, but we're always ranked according to somebody.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, could you tell us a little bit, Adam, like what a moot court is? Because I'm also not familiar with that as well, but it sounds
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so we moot court for ONU is just the term that we use for appellate um, competitions. So basically, in the real world, if there's a case that goes to trial, somebody doesn't like the outcome or something that happened during the trial, they'll appeal it, and the appeal goes before the appellate court, and that's generally a panel of judges, typically three, depending on the court. And basically, they will look at the facts that were found in the tr at trial, and they'll look at the law, and the attorneys will argue. In the real world, a lot of times it's just written advocacy. So the attorneys will write briefs to the judges. The judges will review them and say, yeah, the trial got it right or the trial got it wrong. Um, but for law school and many districts in Ohio, actually, they require oral advocacy. So you write a brief arguing your side, and then you basically stand before the judges and argue your case and the law intertwined with it. And the judges will pepper you with questions to try to either see how well you know the law or try to throw you off your argument and see if you can get back to your argument. And it's a lot of stylistic things that you get scored on. Like, is your speaking voice good? Do you know the law well? Are you able to answer questions well? Are you able to get back to your argument very well? Just things like that. Kind of not as much of a show as the trial team stuff is. And like I said, it's kind of a bore you to death thing. A trial, I feel like if you were just someone off the street, it's somewhat entertaining to watch. An appellate competition, you're gonna fall asleep.
Oh,
So that's how
gotcha.
I would
Trial is
describe what I
real.
do.
Yeah, trial is really a lot about creating the record that is then going to be referenced in the appellate court if that is so appealed. The trial is all about getting the facts on the table. It's about getting up there and saying so and so did X, Y, and Z, and giving that to a jury or to a judge and then making a decision based on the evidence, which is all the stuff that comes in. And a large part of the trial is, or the argument part of trial is going to be going back and forth about whether or not something's admissible as evidence. Can the jury hear this? And there's rules that we have to follow as far as what comes and what doesn't. And then on the appeals end of things, um, the facts are already out there. Really, nothing new is going to come in factually. Now it's going to be a question of, okay, we think the judges or the jury, we think the result was wrong. And here are other court cases that have held these things, these certain rules. Here's how our facts are similar to how these other cases, and here's why you should apply that case law, that precedent to us and find in our favor.
Hmm. It seems like, yeah, really, it seems like a lot of what, I guess, what trials and appeals then is just like really knowing your stuff. Like,
Hmm.
um, I guess like not letting anything slip through the cracks. Is that like an accurate way to look at it?
I think that's an accurate way to look at trial, especially
Okay.
appellate work as well for the research aspect of it. Um, So making sure you're not missing like a key case that can help you, and making sure you reference that in your argument is definitely a big thing. Appellate work, it's really being prepared for questions from the judge and being able to answer them and bounce back to whatever you want to say. Because like Joe said, trial is all about creating the factual record and making sure the other side doesn't pull a sneaky fast one on you,
Hmm.
and try to get in something into evidence that you don't want, or convince the jury of something that's not favorable to your position. Whereas appellate work, it's like you're before a judge. The judge probably knows the case law and they're going to grill you on it. You need to be ready and you need to know your stuff from the cases. So it's it's a little different in that aspect, and I think both you really have to have a good grasp of the record. Obviously, trial, you're building the record, but you need to have a really good grasp of the story and the exhibits. Whereas the appellate, you need to have a really good grasp of not only the facts of the case, but all of the other cases out there that you can cite to.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense because yeah, if something went a like not appropriate to the law, the appellate essentially is looking at all the other cases to see how to, I guess, like check and make sure it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the case that like so our first year of law school, we all had to actually do an appellate brief and a motion and appellate brief and then give the oral argument on that brief. Um and I believe in that case what we were appealing was not a trial, but the fact that this issue had come before the court and one side had moved to dismiss it and then the court had found in favor of it, I think, and we were appealing the decision. The
Mm,
appeal was the decision to dismiss it. Do we even get to argue this issue in court? It was a question about religious freedom, and whether or not the court was even poised to hear that. And
Yeah.
then,
And
so then we were arguing. Yeah,
there was also a circuit split on it. So the we were technically arguing, was it the Ohio Supreme Court or the United States Supreme Court technically?
we were U.S. Supreme Court because
Okay.
we were applying
We were
the
applying federal law.
the ministerial exception. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the courts just below the United States Supreme Court had, um on similar cases, had decided and made different rules. So it was kind of a thing of, okay, Supreme Court, you have these courts saying this, you have these courts saying this, pick a lane is pretty much what we were arguing.
mm.
Hey, Adam, did you know we were arguing against the Department of Labor?
I did know that.
Sounds like a fun story.
That was an inside joke. We were so brain dead going into that. And then we had these stupid like aha moments that were like so obvious for both of us. It was like, wait, did you know? Yes, yes, we did.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
one of the things that we were citing to, that we had to cite to, was the Department of Labor's handbook that kind of cut in our favor. And for some reason, we didn't put two and two together that we were arguing against the Department of Labor. And the
mm,
thing that they put in their handbook helped us. And for some reason, even after, I don't know, I think we had written our memos at that point because we were prepping
Yeah,
for the arguments
we
themselves.
were prepping the arguments. Yeah.
And we realized, holy crap, they're what they said helps us. Why did we not figure this out sooner? Why did I not cite this?
Was there whiskey involved that night? I feel like there was. I know it was at my kitchen table.
It might have been. I think that was when I brought over that bottle of Sazerac rye and you made old fashions.
Old
mm.
fashions, that's right.
Yeah, that was the time.
I'm glad we don't have to do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was like
yeah.
the one and only time we really got to work together on an appellate uh appellate argument because then I went on to do trial work. Adam went and has competed twice in Virginia, right?
Yeah, so I did a JAG moot court competition, which is the Army's military branch. Is that technically what I would? Yeah. So went to an Army base in Virginia. It's Fort Belvoir, which sounds impressive, but the base you really just get through the gates, and it's kind of like a typical small town. Not a lot of military stuff goes on there. I think they've got like the Army Corps of Engineers is there. Obviously the JAG is there. I can't remember what else, but I think some research as well. So there's not like tanks and stuff around on the base. But yeah, I did that last year and this year. It was a good experience. Basically, we argued in front of actual either JAG officers or JAG judges, and it was a case that was about military law, which a lot of that coincided with civilian law. Yeah, it was a really good experience.
So, what would a competition like that look like? Is it you go in, present your case, and then the other team does, and they just decide who's better, or
Yeah, so for
okay,
those, it's not so much about if it were the real world, whether the judge would agree with one side or the other. It's more of they're judging. It's kind of like a beauty pageant. They're judging you on how well you can give the argument, how well you can answer the questions, not necessarily whether they would rule for your side.
okay,
Um, and you have a partner. So generally, the way they do those competitions, they write it so there's two clear, separate issues that one advocate will argue, and then the other advocate will argue the other one. Um, so and then you'll go up against another school who will have two people as well. The first group that goes will always get a rebuttal. So like they'll go up there, they'll talk for 12 minutes each, and then the other side will get up, they'll talk for 15 minutes each, and then you can come up and use your remaining time to respond to their points since you went first. Because since you go first, they can kind of work their responses to you into their argument when they go second. And then that's why they give the first team that goes a rebuttal.
hmm, gotcha.
Just to like help you understand and visualize this, Tom, imagine giving your senior oration, but the panel that you're giving it to can interrupt you at any time and throw you off track and ask questions. So like take that Q&A that we did in the last half hour of our oration and put it over top of and during you trying to get through your outline. And that pretty much sums up what the appellate court looks like.
Yeah,
Hmm,
so it's always a fight to get completely through your argument because they're peppering you with questions. You only have so much time. So you get points for answering their questions, but you also get points for getting all the way through your argument. It's just a
hmm,
mad dash.
man, that's crazy. And I would imagine if they're trying to like poke you more, they just keep interrupting you.
Hmm.
Hmm,
Yeah, but
man.
the scary thing is when you always anticipate there being questions. The scary thing is when you get in there and they don't ask you questions and you have what we call a cold
Oh,
bench. So you're like, I have to get up here and I only have about 10 minutes prepared of like memorized stuff because I know that they're going to interrupt me and that's going to take up a little bit of time and get me up to that 15-minute mark. But if they don't ask you any questions, you get up there, you say your piece, and then you realize I still have 5 minutes. Do I just conclude and go sit back down, or do I just keep rambling on? And kind of depends on how much time you have left, what kind of judges you have, because sometimes judges are like, hey, we don't have any questions for you. Say your stuff. If you're done in 10 minutes, whatever. But there was one time where I had a really cold bench and I kind of stammered for maybe 30 seconds before finally just saying, I'm done. Not saying I'm done, but like concluding and saying, hold for us for this way. And the judge is like, you had so much time left. You should have kept going. And I'm like, I didn't have anything else to say.
hmm,
So there's some mind games involved as well.
totally.
It's funny because then like I do the have to do the complete opposite because on a mock trial competition each side is given somewhere between 60 to 75 minutes each side to try their case. And the cases we're given have a lot of rabbit trails you can go down that you don't necessarily need to. And we have found that competitions we fare better when we try a really short case against someone that's trying a really long case. So we'll look at it and go, what's the narrowest way we can go with this? How can we, get up, say our piece, ask the witnesses these questions, and sit down and still have about 20% of that time that we were given remaining at the end. So we're trying to get in and get out
Mm.
as fast as possible because we know on the trial end of things, they like that. And well, Adam was shortly after Adam went to Virginia, I was in New York trying a case, a competition with at Fordham University. It was a big invitational. And we were up against some of the big top schools in the nation, UCLA, Stetson, Hofstra, Georgetown. Um, and we were able to finish in the semifinals. And that was in large part because we tried a very short case. We were able to and it looks good when you have what I call the kitchen sink case, when there's a team that just wants to bring up everything in the packet and then get up there and argue it and deal with every bad fact, explain everything away. It drags, or they rush through it. When you do trial, you speak at a particular pace. You can't fly through everything. So um, it's funny, just I'm just now realizing as I'm sharing his experiences, we do the complete opposite with our time.
That's fascinating. I so do you guys practice like being charismatic? Because I have a friend who was the advocate, the victim's advocate for the court, local inlander, and he said that there were a few judges that, well, the judges were really good, but some of the lawyers, the prosecuting and defense, some were really excellent and some were very bad. And one defense attorney lost to, or I think it was a defense attorney. I forget how it all went down, but essentially her client said that he or she was guilty and they still lost the case. Like she was such a bad lawyer that she couldn't even present to the jury that the situation did happen the way it was, the guy said it happened and they still lost. So my friend Blaine was like, yeah, like you have to be a very convincing type of person in order to get your way through a trial. Would you guys like, does that come naturally for you guys, or do you have to like think about it?
I'll go first. It does
Yeah.
not come naturally to me.
Okay.
That's why I didn't do trial team. I'm kind of an introverted guy. I can be an extrovert if I have to, but I dislike it. And I think Joe could probably tell me I'm right or wrong, but I think when I'm trying to, I do a decent job. For instance, we did a trial together for a class actually, and I think I came out of my shell just a little bit when I needed to. I wasn't great at it, and that's kind of why I don't want to do litigation, but I think Joe does a little bit better of being convincing or putting
The
on a
honorable
show.
judge thought you were better than me, so
Yeah, I don't know. Um, yeah, I think that was yeah, it was an interesting experience, and I think I could do decent if I were to do trial work, but it's out of my comfort zone for sure.
I
Makes
think
sense.
speaking as someone who's more extroverted, um, courtroom presentation is its own thing. It doesn't come naturally just because someone's an introvert or an extrovert. I My first trial, everyone was like, Joe, you sound like you're doing Dateline. I did the opening statement and I kind of put on this facade, I felt like it was performative, like I was doing a show. And uh it didn't land as well as then just kind of getting up there and being a little more matter of fact. So I wouldn't say necessarily practicing being charismatic. Every person's going to have their own courtroom style. Some people can be, like very matter of fact, kind of like, yeah, this happened. Tough. Other people can be a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more charming. You really want, it's about establishing trust with the jury, and that's going to look different for everyone based on personality. There are some people who could get up there, and two people could get up there and give the exact same cross examination, and one could be really pleasant and land really well with the jury, and the exact same material when delivered by someone else could come off as condescending or just off-putting, and that's just all down to style. So everyone's going to find their own voice. So practicing to be charismatic, not necessarily practicing to find your own style that works for you 100%.
That
And
makes
it
a
was
lot of
funny because
sense.
like when I did the trial with Adam, uh, I gave the closing argument and then Adam gave the open. I've sort of been labeled as like the team opener on mock trial because I get up there and I get good scores. I don't know what I do, but apparently it works. And there's sort of a formula to writing a good open. So I was like, I remember working with Adam to kind of pull himself out a little bit, but not necessarily to be a carbon copy of me in the delivery. And I think it landed really well. Um, Trials when you've got partners land really well when you have two different styles. Sort of, I like to say the good cop and the bad cop.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so Adam's very chill. So his cross examinations were a little more laid back and easy going, just kind of like bring out the bad facts. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. Okay, cool. Whereas I was kind of like, when we get in there, oh, you said this and you didn't do that. Okay. Like, it's like play that up to the jury a little bit more and it
Hmm.
works. And that was tough because the jury that we had was all brought by the other side and it was kind of loaded
Wow.
against us, but there was already some bias there, but you'll get that in the real world. So,
Yeah.
um,
Do you guys like kind of change your script as you go depending on what you're reading from the jury?
I think we did a little bit in our trial. Um, not a ton, because the other side was pretty cordial with us in pre-trial, but Joe could probably speak to some other experiences.
yeah, I wouldn't say we changed so much based on the jury, but we do want to be responsive to the case, especially in a mock trial competition. Because with competitions, you have a month, 2 months to prepare your case. You can come and be completely married to your script, and a lot of judges will notice that if evidence that you were counting on evidence you were counting on coming in might not come in. Things you thought you were going to get argued to keep out might come in anyway. And you have to be responsive to that sort of thing. And so like for us in New York, there was there was a question about a letter. There was a question about a letter that the defendant was supposed to have written to Luigi Mangione. There was this incident that happened after the robbery that we were trying for that we weren't things that we just didn't think were going to come in. And after the first round, when we tried to argue it out and we lost the arguments, we were like, oh gosh, these judges want to hear this stuff. We're probably going to have to, this stuff's coming in. So then it kind of would come down to in the moment looking at the notepad and writing down like 3 or 4 questions just to cross-examine or direct or redirect on it, just to show the judges, if nothing else, um, show them that you can adapt, and I think they appreciate that. We had one round with that Luigi Mangione letter, and I gave a really solid argument for keeping it out. They kind of threw a trump card on the table by saying, "Oh, well, we can redact, this line and this line and this line, and then it won't be, prejudicial anymore, and we can bring it in." And I was like, "Yeah, but then the letter has no context, Your Honor. You know, we just don't think it should come in at all." And the guy was like, "Well," the judge goes, "Would you recommend any further redaction?" And at that point, I knew it was coming in, but I stuck to my guns and I just said, "Yes, Your Honor, I would like to redact everything except the signature line." And he was like, "Yeah, nice try. No, it's coming in in its entirety."
Oof.
So trials live and breathe. So you're constantly thinking on the fly and changing that script up. Kinda Um, we tried the same case 5 times in 48 hours, but it was always different. There was no trial was identical to the last. And I think
Mm,
it's the same with the appellate stuff, but just instead of arguing over what evidence is going to come in and which direction the other side's going to go, it's where's the judge going to take you?
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, that was definitely something that I saw in this year's competition. The judges would ask, so especially when we would go second, we would pay attention to the questions that they were asking the first team that would go. And you write down those because they're probably going to say, now you heard me ask them this question. What's your answer to this question? So you write down whatever the things that stumped the other side because generally that's what the judge is going to ask you. And then also keeping track of the questions that they ask you and preparing those for the next rounds that you do. For instance, a big issue was the standard of review of the case, and in our very first argument rounds, they hammered us on it, and I had the answer, but unfortunately, my partner did not have the answer on that, so we had to go back and double check and make sure we were ready for that. And then, of course, the very next round, that was like one of the first questions the judges asked, and we had it. We had that answer.
mm,
So a little bit different for appellate. But in terms of like responding to the jury, I do know that in the trial that Joe and I did for class, we heard some rumblings that the jury didn't like Joe's aggressive style.
mm,
At the intermission. So I know that we talked about, okay, how can we kind of soften them up a little bit? We knew we probably weren't going to win them over, but there were definitely discussions of shifting tone just a little bit.
mm.
I did go into that trial a little hot because I knew who they were going to be calling as the witnesses. It was someone else from our mock trial team, and he was already telling me like ahead of time. He's like, "I'm going to be so difficult on you. I'm going to make you work for that A." And I was like, "All right, I'm gonna fight you." You'll get witnesses that like the whole purpose of cross examination is to make that witness look stupid. It's to bring out all the bad, highlight all the bad things and tear down their credibility as a witness. And so you'll get witnesses who fight you on that when you're sitting there, like bringing out the bad fact. They want to, everything's a yes, but, and they try to clarify it or justify whatever that bad fact is. Or, you ask them a simple question like, oh, you didn't talk to anyone at the scene of the crime. And they might go on for a minute, just kind of rambling and ranting and giving you anything but a yes or a no. So there's a degree in which on cross examination, you want to nail them down to a yes or no answer. And there are different ways of doing that. You can be kind of nice about it and be like, no, I understand that, but my question was simpler. My partner for New York and one of our online trials, he likes to just say, no, 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 we'll get to that. But right now, I need you to answer the questions I'm asking. You can get a little more firmer with them. Um, so there's definitely I went in hot onto that trial expecting it, and then he ended up being really easy to work with, and I looked bad because
Oh,
he was just like very agreeable, and I was like, ready to fight.
sure. Oh man. Yeah, especially like if he said he's going to be hard and he just flips. Do you think that was part of his plan?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
it was he wanted to fight me, and I think what happened was right before the round that particular trial. I think maybe the student who was trying the case against us probably said to him like, "Hey, let's just make this easy." That class, like instead of having a final, we had the trials, and there had been a couple of trials that went on really long,
Hmm.
really, really long. And so I think we were the last one to go. We knew no one in that room wanted to be there. We did not
Hmm.
want to be there. It was the day before classes ended. That was the last thing I had to do for the semester. So I
Ah.
think that he probably felt bad and said, "All right, I'm not going to be hard. I'm just gonna." And I did not get the memo. So
Hmm.
I think he also was a little bit nervous, or at least that's the
yeah,
vibe I picked up.
Hmm. Does
it's just
the,
funny because I'm working with him now.
yeah. Well, that's cool. Do you guys, are the juries then for the mock trials, are they other students as well? Or
For this class, it is.
for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we try the cases in competition for mock trial, it's a panel of judges. And on the earlier rounds in a competition, it's usually other attorneys. It's attorneys that are getting continuing education credit for their bar licenses. Um, so
Okay.
there'll be like opportunities for them to volunteer, go spend a couple hours, judge a mock trial, and get the credit. But then as you go up in the ranks, you'll get actual judges. Our second round in New York, we actually tried the case before the Suffolk County District Attorney. And he really enjoyed our case. Like he was ready to give us his business card and give us jobs. Like he was happy.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, we had like a couple of county judges sit on the bench. Um, and then I know once you get up to like the final rounds, you have real judges and they're very no nonsense. And,
Mm.
um, I think when you get the younger attorneys, a lot of times they want to see where are you going with this. So they might be a little more lenient on how they rule on certain evidentiary arguments. Whereas some judges are just like, no, I don't want that coming in. It doesn't meet the rule. You're screwed. So
Man, that's interesting. I was just curious because I'm like, a lot of times it really depends on your jury, like how things are gonna go. So I'd imagine like having other lawyers and then eventually judges probably makes you really, I guess, like what you're saying, Joe, like condense your arguments into what really matters, which is probably a really good skill.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was funny too, because at the end of that trial, the judge, the professor for that class is a real judge in the county. Um, she came up to us afterwards and was like, I just want you to know I saw clearly what was going on with that jury. I know like only one person on that jury was yours. You guys don't have to worry. You did a great job because they, of
Mm.
course, it came back guilty, it came back against us. And we were like, all right, whatever.
Sure. Well, that's encouraging though. And that's really cool. Like, yeah, like that one guy wanted to give you guys jobs. I mean, that's probably a great networking opportunity as well, like just to meet more people and see what's out there for opportunities.
Oh, the half of law school is networking. Wouldn't you agree, Adam?
I would say, yeah, yeah. We do a lot of meet the employer nights as well, where we'll bring in local attorneys, prosecutors that will come in, and students will have the opportunity after the class day is over to come in and talk to those employers to try to get internships. And then beyond that, I mean, LinkedIn is your best friend, I would say,
Mm,
when it comes to
Yep.
networking in law school. And then just trying to use whatever connections you have, family connections, connections in the area. I mean, I've secured a job for after I graduate, and it was um, like through a friend of a friend of a friend, and it just I tried to pull favors and it worked out.
that's awesome.
And
It's funny,
Yeah.
an
also
attorney
professors,
once,
Mhm.
yeah.
networking with professors, because many of them were former attorneys, some of them in Ohio, and if they have connections and you do well in their class and maybe you come to their office hours when you don't really need to go to them, they can be a good reference or they can hook you up with a job with someone else.
Mm, that's awesome.
Yeah. Um, oh, I lost my train of thought. I had something to add to that, and it's gone. But never mind.
I guys, I have to say I'm 100% with you with LinkedIn. So I found that, well, how helpful that was like 2 years ago. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk. Do you know him?
Mm-mm.
Okay. He's a really big name in the entrepreneur space. He's done a lot of really cool stuff. But he was saying, he's like, look, you can get a lot of numbers and followers on big platforms, but he said, LinkedIn is your best friend. He said, people on there want to talk to you. They're interested. They run stuff. You don't have to worry about bots. Like, it's all verified. And I was like, okay. So I recommend this to everyone I've talked to. I don't know if anyone's done it yet, but every week I max out my invite connections list. So I think they give you like 100 or 150 invite requests. And I just connect with all these really cool people I'd like to follow or get to chatting with. And so I've connected with some huge names. And I'm just like, hey, how's it going? And they'll talk to you. And I can't believe it. And it's really cool because I think the difference is like on like Instagram or Facebook, people think that you're trying to get something from them. But if you chat on LinkedIn, they're another business person and they're like, yeah, this is all about business. Like that's what we're here for. So let's talk and see if we can collaborate or do something. So opened so many doors. I made quite a few friends on there and then yeah, tons of business opportunities. So 100% I'm with you guys on LinkedIn. So that's
I
awesome. You
think
guys use it.
something an attorney also shared with me, and this is what I was going to say before I forgot. Um, our classmates also are should be really good networking resources.
Mhm.
Law school is a very tense and competitive environment, and it's a shame that that can get in the way of really solid relationships because at the end of the day, we are all going to go our own separate ways, but that does not mean that we are not going to cross paths in the world again. There's only so many lawyers in this world. You know, it's a small percentage of our country. And the odds of us bumping into each other or maybe needing to give a reference or something, um, at some point down the line, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I know an attorney, and she said that there was a guy who was a jerk to her in law school. He turned up like 10 years later at the firm that she was working at. And her boss said, "Hey, do you know this guy? What do you think? I see you went to school together. We're in the same class." She said, "Don't you dare. These are my experiences with him." And he did not get a job because of her experiences. Um, so like it's like we are our own internal network, and
Mm,
that's super important. I think that's part of why I think, I keep my head down and I just focus on the work. I know Adam does the same.
yeah.
And we are pretty much always, I'm always going to be there for him as far as um, work, recommendations, referrals, anything like that. And I think the feeling is mutual. So
Yeah, for sure. And the nice thing about ONU is for such a small school, the network and the alumni network is huge. And it's not only just in Ohio. We have, for whatever reason, especially for the law school, we have a lot of out-of-staters, Joe included. But like he said, because of that, I think you run a high chance of running into former polar bears out in the wild. Um, and then, yeah, when it comes to the way that I present myself at school, I kind of treat it like a job. I'm friendly enough, I'm cordial enough, but I don't get too close to people because I don't want to make enemies. Like Joe said, it can, especially during your first 2 years, it gets really cutthroat. So I tried to spend as little time as possible at the law school, especially during that first year. I would come in, go to class, and I'd get out of there. I would study in the undergrad library, in part because that's where I had studied the previous 2 years, because I went there for undergrad, but also to get away from it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes with that cutthroat environment, it can be not only detrimental to making friends and putting a target on your back, but it can be pretty bad for your mental health too to spend too much time in that building.
Mm, mm,
it was funny because a lawyer mentor of mine once said, don't study with your friends. Find people that understand the material the same as you, study with them, and then being friends with them will follow. But if you go and start studying immediately with the people that you like from day one have decided are your social group, nothing's ever going to get done. And it's funny because I met Adam actually at our admitted students day, before we had even before I had signed the check for ONU. We just kind of crossed paths there. I noted he was a double bear, so he was already familiar with ONU. Um, and then we both ended up sitting in the back row. It was him, me, and another student. I hadn't really gone out of my way because I was still figuring out the lay of the land with who I wanted to study with. We both got invited to study with a couple of other students, and then slowly but surely realized that it was gonna that he and I moved at the same pace and understood the material the same way, and that's kind of how everything took off.
Hmm.
And
That's
then,
a
unlike Adam, who was keeping his head down, I was the one with the target on my back 1L year. I had a ton of drama, and I just remember Adam was like the reality check for me. And then I was like, "Oh, we're friends! Holy crap!" So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, man, that's so true though. Like, I feel like that's honestly like a good lesson for just outside of that type of environment. It's like, yeah, if you do work towards something you see as good, then you'll start finding a lot of cool people on the same path, and then you'll really jive. Sometimes when you try to find company because you feel alone, that's the worst kind of company. So, yeah. Well, maybe as the last question, what are your guys' goals for this next and final semester?
I'll go first. It's my goal academically would be to stay at the top of the class. I'd like to get my GPA over the 4.0 mark. Still waiting on grades to come back from fall semester, so we'll see how much work I have to do there. Maybe it's already over it.
Mm.
Um, Not complete if I do stay at the top of the class, not make a complete fool out of myself if I have to give a speech at graduation. Um,
Gotcha.
that's about it.
Mm.
So my goal is just like one under Adam because right now I'm number two in the class. I am not pushing to pass Adam. We're running across this finish line together. Um, I am zero point zero 0.01 away from the threshold for summa cum laude, and that's really like once these grades come back, I'll see how realistic that is and how hard I'll have to work this semester to get that. But once I kick into the 3.9s, I will be like, that's all I care about. We also have this honor society for students in like the top 5%. And so it's just more, I don't care necessarily so much about the rank as long as I'm within that bracket. So being able to finish, maintain my rank, finish summa cum laude, and hopefully finish by virtue of that, be in that society is really what I'm aiming for. Um, I'm already, I think, singing at graduation, so someone else has to give the speech because it won't be me.
Let's get roped into that.
Yeah. And
Adam,
then
if I don't hear an I digress during your speech, I put one in that final.
did you?
I did.
So so we have a tax professor. I don't know if Joe's told you about him, but one of his things that he always put tax on at the end of a long-winded story is just, ah, but I digress. Um, So, and we kind of caught on. I don't think we caught on to it as much the first time we had him, but the second time we had him, we did, and it was everything we could do to keep from laughing every time he said it. And it's a very small class. There was like 7 people in the class,
Evan.
so you can't hide if you're
No,
laughing.
no, I literally was like, economic protectionism is bad. We seek to prevent that. You just can't do it. But I digress. And then I went on.
That's great.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
In terms of like intangible goals, though, for law review, I want to leave the um the journal in a at a better place than we found it. Not that last year's e-board was bad by any means, in the transition. I just hope that we can instill in them what we do and make sure we have good successors. So
Mm,
can't really measure that, but that's definitely one of the things that's on the back of my mind for this semester.
that's a great goal. Yeah. Mm,
My other goal is with mock trial. So my partner and I were able to get us into the semifinals in New York, and we'll be competing at a regional competition. The one we did in New York was a national competition. We'll be doing a regional competition in February. Our goal is to finish in the top there and then advance into the nationals. And then basically go as far as we can in that competition. With our coach thinks with what we brought in New York and the fact that we gave top schools a run for their money when we're going against these schools that don't have as much polish in the regional round, there's no reason we don't advance unless there's some wild curveball. So not so much about the glory of winning as it is being able to, these are the competitions that like really help our ranking in terms of trial advocacy. Right now we're number 25 in the nation. We want to move up. So I just have
Mm.
a goal to help our program advance in whatever way I can, whatever that means, advancing at the regionals or um, just having a good score, a good enough score that we can move up in that rank, just contributing to the trial team one final time before I graduate and then hopefully come back to coach.
Man, those are awesome goals. I really love how you guys are like passing on the torch to the next generation. That's super cool. Honestly, I feel like that's a lot of what, we're asked to do in life, it's like do our best so that the next person in line can have a turn. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, it was a real pleasure having you both on today. I'm really glad we got to chat about what you guys are doing and to learn more about the inside scoop of what it's like being a law student. And I'm really praying and hoping for your guys' success the next semester and looking forward to hear about how things go. And when is graduation by chance?
It is May 16th.
May 16th. Okay.
Who's counting?
All right. Well, I'm gonna jot that on the calendar. I'd love to be out there for you guys. So
Okay.
That'd
I'll
be
see if I
great.
can, but it'd be cool.
You're like what? So I know you're in Wyoming right now, but yeah, you're like Illinois is like what? Where you are is like 6 hours.
Yeah, that's not bad from
All right.
Illinois. So yeah, I know I've been wanting to come visit Joe, but it hasn't really lined up. So maybe this would work. But
Cool.
well, thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
Thanks
Um,
for having us.
Thanks for having us.